everyone. My name is Ashley Williams, and welcome back to the Ripple Effect of You podcast. I am so excited to have you here and for my guest today, Alli Rizacos. She is such a great individual person. I love her topics that she focuses on with neuroscience and manifesting. And I'm just really excited to have her here today, especially because of the fact that my first podcast, as you know, was talking about my experience and diving into entrepreneurship and really having moments where I was kind of questioning my capabilities, if I could do it. And I really was so excited to have her today in order for us to really learn about the process around how the brain thinks around when it's about to go into when we're thinking about pursuing our purpose. What does that look like for us internally? How are we navigating those feelings? So Alli, I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ashley.
Definitely. And so what got you into wanting to study more around neuroscience and understanding the brain more and around imposter syndrome?
Yeah. It was one of those things where I noticed that I was spending all my free time learning it on my own, like podcasts and books. Like every book, every podcast is about self-development or the brain or psychology or whatever. And I just finally kind of clued in. I was like, does everyone, like I kind of asked myself, does everyone do that? And then you realize, no, not everyone does that, right? Some people listen to, I don't know, like cars or golf, whatever, right? And like, it was almost like I only had like one hobby, and it was learning about the brain. And so I always knew that it was like something that clearly fascinated me, and which was one of the reasons why I stuck around in sales. So my background is, I had a pretty, maybe lengthy, I don't know. I was in sales for 15 years, worked at companies like Salesforce and whatnot. And what kept me in sales, because sales is a pretty tough gig, is the psychology behind it, right? I really switched the focus from, just making it about achievement and accolades and quota and money and all that kind of stuff, to really taking it and looking at it as if I'm getting like my master's in psychology. And so I was like, cool, free master's in psychology. I'm getting paid to get my master's in psychology. And what the imposter syndrome part, which, is kind of where I've dedicated my time being an imposter syndrome coach now, is really because it was something I continuously faced over and over again, right? And I think there's a couple different flavors of it. There's the one that you talked about where it's like you feel inadequate to pursue the thing that you really want to pursue, right? But the other flavor of it is that we are pursuing something and telling ourselves that this should make us happy or should be the thing that we should, we should be doing. And it's not, but we're kind of pretending that it is, so we can like fit in and belong and kind of keep up the ruse for appearances and to keep your job or whatever it might be, right? So there's two flavors of it, right? And a lot of the time I actually work with people in that second bucket, right? Where they're like, I've done everything right. I went to the good school and I got the good grades and then I got the good job and then I got promoted and I make more money and la 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 la. And this sucks. Like I'm not happy. Like this, just to be blunt, like I'm not happy.
Yeah.
And it's so off-putting, right? Because you're like, I did everything I was supposed to do. How did this not work? Like what's broken in me that this didn't work, right? And what I help people realize is that there's nothing broken in you, and you were programmed and given a lot of propaganda towards following that path, but that there's another path, right? And I like to call that like your own authentic success, right? Having success on your own terms. But obviously capitalism and consumerism they don't want us to have that.
The fulfillment. And I mean, I feel like that with, the most recent generations too, like we all have this idea of like the white picket fence type of thing, it's like you do this whole game plan and then boom, it's, like you said, it's not fulfilling and it's not what you really want to do. And it's trying to take that step, but then also the doubt within yourself. So how did you
feeling so alone and lost? Cause you're like,
yeah,
why is this happening to me? Does anyone else feel this way? And then you don't talk about it because you don't want to feel like you're the weird one, right? But everyone feels the same way. Everyone's like, I hate this.
This is so refreshing. Yeah. So for people who do feel this way, what would you say are like some steps to take like for them to take a step back and to reevaluate and moving forward? Like what's the path forward?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like anything in life. The first step is like acceptance, right? Even like admitting that you're not happy with the current situation, because here's the hardest part. On paper, you should be happy, right? It's like you have the good job, you have the good house, you got the husband or whatever. You have all the things. And to say, and that doesn't make me happy, you're like, ooh, I can't. Like that, what am I? I'm so spoiled, or I'm such a brat, or like whatever, right? So it's even hard to even just accept it and then admit it, right, to yourself, right? So I think that's obviously the first piece, because once you can accept it and admit it, now you can actually do something about it, right? And it's not an easy journey, because really you have to unravel all of the conditioning that got you to this place, right? It's all conditioning, because like basically after the Second World War, like in the 50s, there was all this propaganda about, keeping up with the Joneses and the white picket fence. And we're still kind of unraveling all of that nonsense, really, right? Because our parents lived through that era.
Right, exactly.
So they told us that's what we should need too, right? And it's like, it's just, our life is with technology, like our cultural values have changed so dramatically, right? But yet our brains don't adapt as quickly, right? Our brains have not evolved to understand what is even happening in the world right now. Like our brains are still, bring it back to neuroscience, our brains are still programmed completely for survival and comfort. They are not programmed for like innovation and growth. And they're just like, I want to live so I can procreate. That's my job. And you're trying to make me do all these other things that I'm like not really equipped for. So it's really like a reprogramming of your entire mental operating system, right? Because if you do the exact same thing, just in another industry, say you're like, okay, I don't want to be in sales anymore. I'm going to go be, I don't know, I'm going to go work in entertainment. And you just do the exact same steps, but in a different industry, you're going to end up in the exact same place, right? Like you're going to be unfulfilled, right? So it really is this like unraveling of the entire operating system that even got you there. And wow. To me, it's like we've all been given a user's manual, right? That had, step 1, get good grades. Like step 2, go to a good school, la, la, la. And we have to now realize that we can create our own user's manual and follow our own rules, right? So that's why I always say success on your own terms, right? Because you don't just have to follow what you were programmed to do, right? Like what you were conditioned to do. You have the authority, right? That's the other thing, like connecting with your own inner authority versus outsourcing your authority to society and cultural norms and all these kind of things, right? You have the authority to write new rules, right? So like, for example, if I wanted to leave sales and go become a chef, right? Yeah, it might be kind of hard, right? Maybe it's a weird pivot, not impossible. And I think we're going to start to see that over and over and over again. So many of these like shifts and pivots, because we're kind of just, the boomers are, obviously aging and, now like, I mean, I can't believe that like now in the workforce, there's like people that are born in the 2000s.
I know.
So creepy to me. Right? And like that's like a totally different mindset, right? So like they're going to have like a whole, like working at the same company for your whole life, like not even in their programming anymore, because their parents probably worked at 5 different companies in their lifetime, right? So I think we're going to like slowly start to see just like, I hope, an embracing of all of our passions, right? I don't like the whole picking like one career and being that thing for the rest of your life, like not a thing in our society. We have too much access to information, too much access to learning that like, which no one had back then. Like you were only one thing because you couldn't learn another thing. There was no ability, there was no YouTube, Now I could be like a chef in 3 weeks if I wanted to. I just like binge a bunch of YouTube stuff and I could probably figure it out, You don't even have to pay for it. It's free too. It's like the, democratization of learning, right?
Right.
So like we're going to have all these people that are multi-passionate and pursuing new things. And I hope it's going to become not so imprisoning that we have to just like find one path, find one career, and stick with it for the rest of our lives, right?
Yes, I love this conversation. Yes, I mean, it's all about pursuing the purpose, which is what this podcast really focuses on. And speaking of which, too, as you were,
I think you could have multiple purposes, though.
Right, exactly, right. And which I was going to ask you about with the brain as well, how you're talking about how it adapts, like with if you wanted to switch over and to be a chef, and how it might be a little jolting at first, but then could you talk to us about how the brain it shapes itself, how it like restructures itself in order to
neuroplasticity is a thing, right? Like the brain can change, right? Can adapt, can create new neural pathways to basically get back to a level of comfort in whatever situation it's in, right? So yes, in the beginning, when you completely change careers and now you're like, you don't know anyone, you don't know the skills, whatever, that your brain's like, this is unsafe, right? Like, get out, right? Your brain's trying to tell you to get out because it feels unsafe, right? But the more you do it, the more your brain's like, I guess we're not as unsafe today. I guess today feels a bit safer, right? And all of a sudden now it's your new normal, right? Like even for myself, like I was in the corporate world, since I graduated university, and then I left 2.5 years ago. And at first it was so unsettling. I was like, I honestly felt like the job police was gonna knock on my door and be like, what the hell do you think you're doing? Go get a job. Yeah, I like honestly was like scared, because my body was like, this is unsafe. Like this is crazy, right?
I cried after the next day after. I was like, what did I just do?
I was like, I'm gonna be poor, like all these crazy misunderstandings that we think are true, right? And now I can't even imagine working in an office or like a 9-to-5 schedule. Like my life, I don't have any of the like guilt or like anything in the sense of like, if I decide to like go to the grocery store at 2 p.m. in the middle of the day, or I just start watching TV in the middle of the day, whatever, right? Because I can. I don't have any of the like, but like I should be doing something else. Now it's so normal to me, right? So our brain just adapts because our brain always does want to be in comfort. So it's going to normalize things so that it can come back down to comfort, right? So it's like, but the problem is we typically quit before we get to the comfort piece, right? And then we're like, oh, see, like, it was really hard, so then I couldn't do it. It's like, yeah, but everything becomes easy if you just keep doing it, right?
True. It's funny that you say that too, because I was literally thinking about this the other day. Like, it's like choose your hard. Everybody can choose your hard, where you do what everybody does and you decide not to live out your purpose and your authentic self. Or you can choose to go the hard path, but eventually, like you said, it will get easier with time because everything is temporary. So it's basically choose your hard.
I love that. Yeah, it is. It's choose your hard. And listen, one hard is not better than the other, like obviously I have a preference for myself and I think there's a lot of benefits to it, right? But for some people, like even just having a corporate job is crazy to them. Maybe they come from a totally different background and whatnot, right? So like that could seem insanely hard to them, and that's cool, like it's one is not necessarily better than the other, but it's choose your hard, right? And it's knowing like what's the outcome of that hard that you're putting yourself through.
Yes. Well, I'm going to be mindful because we're going to keep these short in order for people to be able to get information and also connect with Alli even further. For example, she has her master class, which I'm really excited about, as well as she works with individuals individually. But I would love, Alli, for you, as we're wrapping up here, what would you say then for a person who is, having these, in the process of moving forward with their purpose, but they're also trying to manifest this? Are there things that they can do every day in order to help with that restructuring of the brain? Or what are things that they can do in order to keep kind of their nervous system, balanced in order to make that brain connection?
Yeah. So the two things that I think are, well, okay, I'll say 3 things maybe. are kind of the easiest, but I say that, but easy is all relative, right? Just like hard is all relative. So journaling, I think, is such a powerful tool. There's science behind it, I'm sure, but every time I'm like, I can feel like my inner tension or like even in my brain that like just something like I'm just like irked and I'm not as like peaceful, I'll get my journal and I'll just start like, what's up? Basically, like asking myself like what's going on, and I just write it all out, whatever it is, and it's almost like magic. It's like immediately I feel lighter. I feel like I don't have to carry this, and I just can start to make sense of what's happening, right? Because I can see the words on the page and like view it from a different angle to be like, that's probably why, or whatever, right? Like you just start to actually connect more dots when you have some distance from it, right? So journaling, just like stream of consciousness, whatever's happening, like I'm annoyed with this and I freaking hate that or whatever, just like let it all out, because it'll start to make sense. It'll start to be like, at least for me, like I just start asking myself questions as I'm going through, like, well, why is that making me upset? Like, what about it is making me upset, and keep going, right? So that's one. The other one on a daily basis is gratitude journaling. So gratitude journaling isn't just like, oh, think positively. It's truly a tool to strengthen our prefrontal cortex, which is the part that makes us human. Every other animal does not have a prefrontal cortex. So it's literally the thing that makes us a human species. And it is the part of the brain that is in charge of rational, logical thinking. And so when we are, stressed and freaking out or any of these things, it's due to our limbic system, which is our kind of fight or flight part of the brain, right? So talking about coming back down, regulating ourselves back down and staying grounded, the more that you can strengthen your prefrontal cortex, the more that something stressful or upsetting happens in a day, you'll have a better grasp on how to kind of switch out of it, right? How to use your prefrontal cortex in that situation to say, okay, what could that person have maybe not intended to do that, right? Like you start to ask yourself different questions versus like ramping yourself more up into the frustration and the stress. So I do like 5 minutes of gratitude journaling every day. And then the other one is, so that's kind of the stuff for your mind, but your body and your mind are completely connected. So I love walking. I mean, I love other forms of working out, but I think walking is accessible to most people, right? Not everyone, but most people. And yeah, just walk it out. I get like so much clarity and answers from just walking. And sometimes I'll listen to podcasts, sometimes I don't, but it's just like fresh air, movement. Like typically if we're stuck on something, well, sitting down is kind of like staying stuck, right? You're not moving. Like moving it out actually like can really get the stickiness out, right? So those are kind of the three, pretty basic, sounds like really that's it, but it actually is that simple. Right? And most people just don't do those things. So that's why they feel kind of stressed and unclear and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's so fantastic. I will definitely adapt those into my routine. Yes, I appreciate that. And I feel like it is really simple, but it's just having the discipline to do it, to make
Totally.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alli. Well, I was going to ask you too, how can people connect with you further and work with you? I'm so glad I randomly connected with you. I think you were in like my LinkedIn feed or something. And I was like, oh my God, I love your content. I love what you talk about. So thank you so much for the work you do and for stepping into your purpose. I so appreciate that. But for other people who are interested in working with you, and how can they find out more about you as well as other upcoming events or opportunities that you might have for people to connect further with you?
For sure. So I hang out exclusively on LinkedIn. I don't have any other social media except for LinkedIn. So you can look me up by my name, Alli Rizacos. You'll see it in the show notes. In terms of other events, so I have a free masterclass, the neuroscience of imposter syndrome. So if you kind of like the brain stuff and the psychology stuff, you'll really like this. I actually had a neuroscientist join me for that masterclass. So you can find that on my page in the kind of featured section. And then if by chance you have any listeners in Toronto, I am doing a live event, a networking event around for women entrepreneurs and women in business, with the theme being manifestation, which is quite funny that, that's your vibe too.
Well, thank you so much, Alli, for your time today. It's been such a pleasure. I'm so delighted by this conversation, and I just appreciate your work so much. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.